Thank you so much for joining me today to talk
Oh, thank
about
you.
Dashcam, which I think is awesome. Um,
No, thanks
so,
for having me.
oh yeah, absolutely. So interestingly enough, this idea for Dashcam actually came prior to Host. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. This was something me and Jed came up with. This was pre-pandemic. We came up with it 2019, 2018, somewhere thereabouts, and and pitched it round before anyone knew who we were, before Host, and nobody wanted to do it. And then it kind of went on a shelf, same as a lot of other projects. And then after Host, we were looking for something to do with Blumhouse for the first of my deal with them. And I wanted to find something that we could do in a similar way to Host. We could improvise, we could just go and shoot straight away, straight after Host. And Dashcam felt like actually it kind of became more interesting and stronger and more kind of provocative to be shot in the midst of a pandemic. And that context kind of only added to the fun of it.
Yeah, it is really interesting that you kind of were able to take things like lockdown and how that's kind of inherently creepy, like the
Yeah,
isolation, and really turn that into something like dread filled.
yeah.
Now, Annie, of course, really kind of makes this project.
Hmm.
She's so over the top.
Yeah,
At what point did she come onto the project?
she is the project, really. I mean, the show in the movie Band Car is a real show that she does, where she drives around and improvises rap lyrics to commenters' suggestions. And it was really her that made it an interesting prospect for me, coming off the back of Host, which was really a movie that was improvised by the cast and by myself, like just workshopping this outline that we'd written. We just workshopped it day by day and figured it out in real time. And I knew, just watching Annie and watching those videos of her doing her show, that she has such a razor sharp wit. I knew that she'd be able to carry the movie. She'd be able to carry me. She'd be able to make every single horror set piece that would probably be pretty kind of ordinary if you had a typical final girl in the middle of it. But as soon as you throw Annie Hardy into it, it becomes a whole different thing. The way she reacts, the way she cracks jokes, the kind of just bizarre decisions that she makes. And I knew that would kind of like turn what was a pretty simple setup into a totally different movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so interesting because, and this will kind of segue into my next question, which is, you don't always agree with what she says. A lot of the time she says awful things,
Yeah,
but I couldn't help but just be completely engaged and find her hilarious.
yeah.
Was was it ever maybe a challenge to have a character that's so has a lot of sort of
Abrasive.
interesting
Yeah,
views. Presenting that as a
yeah.
main
Here's
character. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, as a director, you can only really go off your own gut.
Mm.
And I think Annie's hilarious, and I think Annie's likable, and I think Annie's charismatic, and and we'd kind of tried different versions of the scene, and the ones that ended up in the movie are the ones where I felt like, to me, it didn't become grating, that you were still finding some kind of sadistic glee in watching her uh, run rampage through the UK. And to be honest, I think that's one of the beautiful things that horror does. Is horror is like an empathy machine. It
Mm.
really makes you root for the character's survival, no matter who they are. And I thought it could be a really kind of fun thing if a lot of people watching this movie are presented with a character that they'd normally cross the street to avoid, and by the end of the movie they're rooting for her to survive. I thought that'd be awesome. It hasn't always happened. A lot of people have wanted her to die, but I just think there's horror's the great leveler. Like, you want Annie to survive the night, I think, if you've got any level of empathy.
Yeah, and I think I completely got that because, as I said, yeah, you wouldn't necessarily want to subscribe to her views, but I mean, she had me laughing and engaged, and also, like, I found it really tense because,
Mm.
as you say, you do root for her,
Yeah,
and
and you don't know what she's
so
going to do.
yeah, so things get pretty intense and escalate pretty quickly in the movie. And I was really impressed with a lot of the camera work and the tricks. Do you recall a scene that was like particularly challenging as far as like, whenever like stuff really goes south?
Yeah, it's actually the bit that I'm kind of like the proudest of in the movie, but also is the most challenging. Is like there's a section in the middle of the movie. It's kind of when stuff really starts to kick off. It starts with a kind of bloody scene in the car involving some staples, and all the way through to a very nasty arm break. There's
Hmm.
like a 20-minute scene that's meant to be one single take in real time. There's not meant to be any cuts. It's all meant to be unfolding live in front of you. Um, and so there was nothing for me to be able to cut away to. Like with Host, I had like 7 characters sometimes, and I could always cut to a reaction, or like, you know, I could be making those decisions in the edit. But instead, we were having to find these very exact cut points. So we'd have, a bit of action would happen, a car crash would happen, and then the camera would move off past a bit of grass or something like that, and we'd say that's our hidden cut point, and then we'd have to pick up the next shot from that exact point and make it feel not like it was being cheated or that it was a series of shots glued together, but it was actually something that was unfolding in front of you. And you've really got to know that the pace of that's going to work in advance, because there's no hiding any of that in the edit. And yeah, that just took a lot of time, and I actually blocked it out with a couple of the Host girls. Emma and Haley from Host came over to our offices, and we shot that entire scene in the car park just to figure out if the pace of it would work. And then on the day with Annie, we just shot exactly what we needed to slot together to make that scene.
Nice. And as you say, Annie's a real musician. She's a
Yeah.
real streamer. How much of it was your direction, and how much of it did you kind of just give her the room to riff and explore the scene?
I kind of, this is part of the what's so lovely about this process working with Jed and Gemma, the co-writers, is we go through and we write an outline for the movie, and within each of those scenes, we kind of know what we need to get emotion wise, what we need to get plot wise. We have the kind of A to B to C of the scene written in bullet points within this treatment. So, my job on set is to kind of to help and work with Annie, and to kind of like harness what's so amazing about her, but also to hit those points. So I was kind of helping, shift her performance towards certain beats that we needed. But to be honest, a lot of it is just with Annie, you get into this kind of like gleeful hysteria where she's saying something and I'm there rolling, I'm with my monitor rolling around laughing on the floor, and then I'm like, oh, say this, and you just start to feed off each other. And so those scenes where she's causing havoc were especially fun. But she's a great actor as well. A lot of it, she like the scenes where she had to cower and be terrified and hide from the various demonic onslaughts that we throw at her. She totally knew what was expected of her. She totally got in the zone. She took the time to kind of to get there, and I think she turned in just a really great kind of layered performance.
Oh yeah, she's terrific. Now to that end, were you ever like go bigger, or she kind of took she kind of knew what to do with that?
Sometimes she's a natural performer. She's a musician. She's she does her show. So she knows how to play up to things. And sometimes she'd say something, it'd be the funniest fucking thing in the world, but it would just be a little too much of a wink to the audience, or it'd be a little too like a little too knowing, or it was about finding that balance that you believe that this very eccentric character is really in this situation, and that it's not, it never quite becomes a cartoon. and you know, it's pretty cartoonish. It's cartoonish, but it's not a cartoon. Hopefully, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. So you had to like rein in maybe some of the more self-aware sort of humor that you
Yeah, yeah, some of it, and some, you know, and then sometimes I'd push more. You know, it wanted to feel uh, like every time the audience felt like they knew what she was going to say or what she was going to do, we'd want to go in a different direction. So I was
nice.
always trying to push against what the viewer would expect.
That's awesome. Now, like with Host and now Dashcam, would you ever like would you say that like these movies are like maybe interconnected somehow? Like, would you ever want to do
Oh,
sort of a
these
crossover?
movies are totally interconnected. They're almost like they're like yin and yang.
Hmm.
They're polar opposites to each other. The Host is a very like Host is relatively classy, kind of like reserved paranormal activity style scares, and then this is like, um, you know, I when we were prepping this movie, I was like, this movie has to be like Evil Dead 2 to Evil Dead 1, or like Hellraiser 2 to Hellraiser 1, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1. It had to be the kind of like big, bloated, over the top, like black comedy sequel to the original, to the kind of classy original. So it's very much like a kind of counter swing to Host. So it's related in that it's really, you know, it was also shot in the same year as Host, is one of the things that people don't know. It was shot in 2020, just 3 months after Host came out. And you know, it really, to me, speaks to kind of the you know, if Host is speaking to the kind of camaraderie of lockdown and jumping on Zoom and doing, you know, quizzes and like we're all in this together, then Dashcam kind of speaks to the anger and cynicism at the end of 2020, when this is still going on, and we're in the UK, we're entering second lockdown, and it felt like, you know, it was the Trump Biden election. It felt like things were bubbling up, and so this movie is kind of the louder, angrier, more abrasive, um, you know, cousin to Host.
Okay. Now to wrap up, I'm kind of curious because there's a really cool trend of like indie horror directors getting brought on board to big tentpole films. You know,
Uh-huh.
like you know, at James Wanell or
Yeah,
James Wan, sorry, and
yeah. Well,
Adam
either,
Wingard.
yeah.
Would that be something that you would ever be interested in doing, like pivoting to like bigger?
I I don't think so. I think I'm too annoying for that. I think I want to get I'd want to get too involved, and I always want to. I'd much rather make things that I can author a bit more. You know, I've just in the middle of doing this Stephen King adaptation, and it was such a lovely project because it was based on one of his short stories, and so me and the writers were able to kind of build in our own mythology and take what King had done so beautifully in the short story and expand it. And I'm kind of like, that seems to be the perfect spot for me, where I can kind of bring a bit of um, my own take to things, which I don't feel like there's room for in some of the big Marvel movies, as you know, excellent as they are.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you so much again. Really fantastic. Again,
Thank
Dashcam is
you.
awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a good
Thanks,
one.
Mike.